Hey guys, I just wanted to pop on here real quick before we start. Chasing Legends. Hey guys, what's up? So I am at the Villisca Axe Murder House, and it's right behind me. I was inside. I wanted to do this inside, but I had some pizza, and it's not agreeing with my stomach, and I feel like I can't breathe. So I am outside doing this episode, but there will be video of the inside um, at a future time. But since I'm here, I figured I would tell you guys about the murders that happened here. And I have my notes here because it's a lot of information and my brain can't handle all of it. So I will give my input and, you know, information. I'm having a really hard time talking today. I really can't think about anything else other than that pizza. I'm sorry, but like if you ever come here, drive the 14 miles. I can't even describe the pizza at the moment. Anyway, welcome to the Villisca Axe Murder House. So, to start out, the town was originally named the Forks. Then it was changed to Villisca, which is apparently a Native American word for pretty place. But because of the murders, people started wondering if that was a mistake, and they were probably thinking of the word Waliska, which is apparently the Native American word for evil place. That was probably just coincidence, to be honest, but you know. So the house was built in 1868. It was a modern farmhouse for George Looms, and the Moores bought the house around 1893. So the family, Josiah was 34. He was a very, very prominent rich person in this town. He had a contract with John Deere, and because of this contract, he became, well, wealthy. So he was a very prominent businessman in Villisca. He worked for 9 years for Frank Jones, and he will get mentioned later. He was an owner of a hardware store, an agricultural supply store. He was also a state politician, and he really liked Josiah working for him. And when Josiah left, he wasn't very happy about it, especially because when Josiah left, he took all of the John Deere contracts with him because now he has a John Deere franchise. So he had a lot of family in Villisca. His parents were there. He had 68 siblings, and 6 of them stayed in Villisca. Josiah then married Sarah Montgomery December 6, 1899, and that was at her parents' house. And then by 1912, they would have 4 children: Herman 11, Catherine 10, Arthur 7, and Paul 5. So all of this happened in June of 1912. And On June 9th, they attended a special evening children's program at their church. It was I believe it was a Presbyterian church, and it was a program that their daughter Catherine was part of, as well as the two Stillinger girls that were with them. So, after this, the church is about 10 minutes away from the house. They come back to the house. Josiah calls the Stillinger's house, asks their older sister if the girls were allowed to spend the night, and the daughter said yes. So, or the sister said yes. So, the Stillinger girls slept in Catherine's room downstairs off of the parlor. And Catherine ended up sleeping upstairs in her brother's room. And in her brother's room, it was the two boys and the 5-year-old boy. So that happened around 9:30. Sometimes it says that they didn't get back until like 10:30. So there's a little contradiction there. But all the same, it was pretty late. So sometime after midnight is when the murder took place. And no one's really sure how he got in, or they. I guess it could be a woman. We don't know. But men were accused. Some believe that it was someone that they knew and trusted, and a lot believe and speculate that the murderer stayed in the attic and waited for them to come home, which I think is the most likely. So sometime after midnight, he came out of the attic. I'm assuming the family had heard things up in the attic earlier that day. So they just kind of chalked it up to either like the kids, or it's a house. I mean, houses creak, even new ones, especially back then. So a little after midnight, the murderer came out and he hit Josiah first, and he hit Josiah with the blade of the axe, and that was the only person that had been hit with the blade. Everyone else was bludgeoned to death with the blunt side of the axe. So he like turned it around and whacked them. The indentation of where the axe hit as he lifted the axe up is still on the wall, which is pretty cool. So Josiah was first, then it was Sarah, and Sarah was bludgeoned to death with the blunt side of the axe. After killing them, they moved into the children's room where the 4 children were, and he killed all of them the same way he killed Sarah. Then he moved downstairs and he killed the Stillinger girls the same way he killed everyone else. Then he went back upstairs and he attacked the bodies again. And Josiah was whacked an estimated 30 times. And him and the other victims were unidentifiable after he was done with them, which is wild. So to me, because of all of this, it seems personal. The Stillinger girls were probably, unfortunately, unnecessary victims, but because they were there, he went ahead and killed them as well. And he hid in the attic. He got into the house somehow, whether he knew them and he snuck in while it was unlocked, or if he already had keys. There was a set of house keys missing after all of this. So that makes me speculate that maybe he had somehow gotten in and taken these keys and then let himself in, and he hid in the attic. Or he let himself in afterwards. But I do think he somehow did hide in the attic. I don't know why. because if he already had the keys, he could just walk in. But all of the doors were locked when they left. But of course, if he had the keys, then he could just let himself in. Either way, for some reason, I feel like the attic is where he was. But again, maybe he took the keys afterwards because he did lock the door after he left. So that could be it. We don't know. Nobody knows how or what, um, how the killer got into the house because everything was locked, windows, doors, everything. So after he was done, he covered all of the mirrors. He even closed the blinds. And with the two windows that had no blinds, he rummaged through their drawers and took clothing and put them over the window. And if you don't know this custom, in the Victorian era, they believed that when somebody died, you needed to cover the mirrors because you didn't want their souls to get trapped. Mirrors are a gateway into the supernatural, um, beyond the veil, so to speak. So they covered those mirrors and windows and everything to put, and then there's a squirrel over there, to put these, uh, the dead to rest. And the Victorian era, people were very, very superstitious back then. This is when seances are big, psychics are big, trying to reach the other side. It was trendy. Victorian era, they had nothing else to do other than protest. So he covered all of those. He went downstairs and he left the room. Well, he left in the room the axe where the Stillinger girls were. So he just left the axe there, sitting up against the wall. And he washed his hands. They found a bucket that had water and was bloody. And he also made himself some beans. So whacking made him hungry, I guess. It's very odd when killers do that. He's like he's one of the three killers that I know of that ate after he murdered. Weird. And he locked the door when he left. He locked the door behind him. And he walked out that door and he locked it. And it's the missing house keys. So the morning came and a neighbor noticed something was wrong. Uh, they had a farm at the time. There's no farm here now, but there was a farm. The animals had not been tended to. The children never left for school. And the family was, for some reason, there was like no sign of them being awake. So they went to the house and they knocked on the door repeatedly. And there are two different versions of this. So this version that I'm giving you is from a review essay by L.H. Larson at the University of Iowa. And this states that she had knocked on the door repeatedly and then she contacted Josiah's brother. And Josiah's brother came over, went into the house, and that's when the family was found. The other account was the neighbor went over, and this was from this was from another site. Um, and I apparently didn't write down the source of that. But the other site said that the neighbor came over, tried to get in the doors, tried to get in the windows, tried everything. Then they called the marshal, and then the marshal contacted the Moore's family. And then the family came over, and then all of the bodies were found. Which one it was, I don't know. The University of Iowa seems to be pretty credible, considering it's a university. So maybe we'll just go with that. But those are the two versions that I found. So in the University of Iowa, Josiah went in, he found the bodies of the Stillinger girls, called the marshal. Marshal came over, and then the town was informed by an all call. And what an all call is when the authorities or whoever needs to inform the town of something, they will literally go out and spread the news. Everyone will know. The crime scene then turned into a complete and absolute circus. And when I say circus, it was a legit circus. They let people into this house. They messed up the crime scene. They were taking pieces of bone from Josiah's skull, which is not only gross but extremely disrespectful. And they were letting them touch the murder weapon. And I know there was no DNA and whatnot, but they could do fingerprints, I believe, because that was one of the things that was mentioned that is why it couldn't be used. They couldn't use fingerprints because the entire town touched the freaking axe. They were not told to leave until the coroner came, and the coroner sent them home. It was a complete mess. And then, when the coroner came, the scene was secured. They saw that nothing was stolen. There was no signs of abuse aside from being whacked. There were pieces of evidence found around the barn suggesting the killer was waiting for them to return home. But also, my thing with the barn is, how did he get in if he didn't have the keys until after? Just speculating. If he had the keys after the murders, how did he get in? So I'm thinking maybe he did hide in the barn, but at some point he snuck into the house and into the attic. And that, I mean, that could have happened when everyone was tending to the farm, maybe, because then everyone's not in the house. I don't know. That's just me. That's just my opinion. Anyway, several suspects were named, and none were ever convicted. One was a schizophrenic traveling minister, question mark, Reverend George Kelly. He apparently confessed multiple times to these murders, and one account says that he claimed a demon made him do it, and then another account said that God told him to do it. So do with that information what you will. And he was charged 5 years later, but two juries believed he'd been coerced by the police, and then Kelly was never convicted. He was let go. At one point, the FBI believed the murders were done by a traveling serial killer, and at the time there was a serial killer. His MO was pretty much the same, except serial killer at the time, Paul Mueller, he was also a pyromaniac, and he would set the houses and victims on fire occasionally, so probably not, but we'll get into that. Paul Mueller was a German immigrant, drifter, and logger. They believed he committed similar murders and targeted young girls, and he covered mirrors after a crime was committed, but there was a lack of evidence that prevented the testing of this theory. And I'm sorry if you hear children in the background. They have been out here, and when I'm in the house, it kind of freaks me out because they're talking. All right, so back up a little bit. Montgomery County community was only 2,500 people at this time, and it was on the main line of the Chicago, Burlington, and Quincy Railroad. Remember, at this time, railroads were pretty much the transportation for everything. So, again, They were last seen around 2 p.m. on Sunday evening. The bodies were found on June 10th. They did bring out bloodhounds, but they lost the scent at the fork south of town. So at that point, they believe maybe he jumped a train. Hastily and unsuccessfully searched the countryside, and several individuals were detained but soon released because they had alibis, and they could prove those alibis. Any attempts to connect these murders to other axe murderers were completely null and void, failed. And no relative of the Moors or Stillinger seemed to have been involved. So a federal criminologist arrived, and he suggested a local party may have been responsible. But irate citizens called him a drunk and ran him out of town. They were like, no, you're stupid, leave. The coroner did not take notes. He did not take notes on the bodies. He did not take notes of the conditions of the bodies. There was nothing. There was no information. He did nothing besides make people leave. The town marshal, again, allowed dozens of people into the crime scene and through the house and to handle the murder weapon, because that's what we do when we're trying to solve crimes. We let everyone touch the murder weapon. And there was no solid evidence of suspects or motive. So that also makes it a little hard. So in 1916, Villisca authorities contacted William J. Burns, National Detective Agency. That's all one word. William J. Burns, National Detective Agency. And they assigned James Newton Wilkerson, who is a person, let me tell you. And he was a former Texas attorney, and he was skilled at what he did. June 12, 1916, he claimed that he found the murderer. Assisted by the Kansas City, Kansas lawman, William Mansfield was arrested. William Mansfield was a packing plant sausage stuffer, military deserter, and bigamist. That's how he was described. Wilkerson called, and I quote, insane blackie. That's what he said. Not me. That's what he said. That I tried to look up what that meant, and I forget, unfortunately, because I'm organized. I was doing this at like 3 a.m., guys. It was a long. I was trying to find as much information as humanly possible. But anyway, he was a labor organizer. His immediate family was axed to death in 1915 in Blue Island, Illinois. So, family being axed? Maybe he did it. So Wilkerson got permission from the Kansas City police to subject Mansfield to third-degree interrogation. I'm going to be honest, I'm not sure what that is, but it does not sound good. To me, that says it was probably pretty rough interrogation, and he got no confession out of it anyway. Especially since he had to ask permission. That was probably a rough interrogation. 1916, Montgomery County grand jury refused to indict Mansfield, and he went free. They let him go. He wasn't indicted. Wilkerson claimed the jury was fixed by a culprit named Frank Fernando Jones, who was 57, and a state senator. J.I. Case, implement dealer, Josiah's one-time employer, and also the richest person in Villisca. And he, remember, was upset that Josiah left. And not only did Josiah leave, he took all of the John Deere contracts with him. So uh, his motive was said to be that he was upset Josiah left, took all of the contracts with him, and so therefore he hired a hitman with the help of his son, Albert Jones, who was 37. And he claimed Moore carried an illicit affair with Albert Jones' wife, which was not true. Frank Jones sued Wilkerson and somehow lost the case. Because that's defamation. He should have won that, but he did not. In spring 1917, New Montgomery County grand jury investigated the murders, heard over 100 witnesses from the list that Wilkerson provided, and found no evidence of any involvement by Frank Jones or anyone else. And let me tell you, Frank Jones, he went hard, okay? He even moved to Iowa from Missouri for this. And it gets better. Wilkerson's character, let me tell you. So, Republican Iowa Attorney General Horace Havner and Special Assistant F.F. Favre, former U.S. Attorney for the Northern District of the Iowa District of Iowa, had leading roles in the grand jury proceedings. So they were involved. Wilkerson, at the time, resided in Missouri, and then he moved to Montgomery County. And he organized his own statewide organization. And he called it the Iowa Protective Association, and he politicized the jury investigation into the case. This man really just wanted to be in the spotlight. I'm gonna keep going, but like, he just really wanted people to know who he was. So he claimed there was a conspiracy to protect Frank Jones, and he attacked the governor and the state legislature. And because of this, he was fired from the state. They're like, bye-bye. Leave. We're done with you. And a law was passed to restrain detectives from making public statements. They were like, we're tired of all of you opening your mouth. We're done. You can blame Wilkerson. This is his fault. He should not have been running his mouth like he was. So in May 1917, the grand jury indicted George Lynn Jacqueline Kelly. Remember, this is the schizophrenic pastor, preacher, reverend, whatever you want to call him. He was described as an itinerant minister that preached at the Presbyterian Church on that Sunday morning that the crime had occurred. He was described as a troubled individual, convicted sexual predator, suspected firebug, aka a pyromaniac, peeping Tom, and had been confined to a federal mental hospital until freed on the grounds that he was no longer dangerous. He seemed unlikely to the jury as the axe murderer, and subsequent comments and behavior drew people's attention to him, but they didn't think that he did it. He argued he slaughtered the Moors and the Stillinger girls in a sexual frenzy, and claimed this on multiple occasions. In the fall of 1917, he gave a detailed confession. He claimed God directed him to the house and ordered him to kill everyone. Havner and Favre accepted this version and believed he acted on hallucinations. The state failed to convince juries in the two trials. The first trial was a hung jury, 11 acquittal, 1 for insanity, and the second was just not guilty after 5 hours of deliberation. And then the state stopped attempting to find the murderer. They were like, "This is too much. We're done. There's too many things going on with this murder, and it's just we can't find it. Cannot find the murder." So Kelly returned to preaching and said to have died in Long Island mental institution in the 1950s. Wilkerson ruined his reputation with an adultery and embezzling funds from the Iowa Protective Association scandal. He left the state and he worked as a carnival exhibitor until his death, until 1944. So he died in 1944. Mansfield continued as a labor organizer and was not tried, and he died in Milwaukee in the 1950s. Havner lost the Republican primary um, as governor in 1920. He ended up leaving politics to become a defense lawyer. So not completely leaving politics, but like leaving the campaigning part of politics. Favell became a Supreme Court justice on the Iowa Supreme Court. Good for Favell. Albert Jones had a stroke and passed in 1935, and that is the son of the former boss of Josiah Moore. Frank Jones remained the leading citizen in Villisca until his death in 1941. The Des Moines Register said that the axe was found in the backyard. And more than one killer? Question mark? Not sure. They did agree it was killed at midnight. And by the way, this is like the actual like news article. Neighbors said they heard nothing. One person tried to open the windows, doors. So again, this is like the second account that I found. Henry Hurton is who told the Moore relative and claimed that somebody was murdered in every bed. And this is according to the Iowa cold cases. So what they found, according to the register, was a 4-pound piece of slab bacon leaning against the wall next to the axe. So we've gone from the axe being found in the backyard to the axe being in the house next to bacon. Again, like, what? Thinking the axe was probably found in the house. Searched dresser drawers for clothing, covered mirrors, and the glass in the entry doors. Found a plate of uneaten food and a bowl of bloody water in the kitchen. Nothing else was disturbed. George Jacqueline Kelly, the preacher, which is also what made him suspicious, left Villisca on the train in the morning immediately. And it was said that after the murders and he got on the train, he was bragging to passengers about what he did, or told passengers what he did. Maybe not bragging, but like he was telling passengers, hey, I murdered these people in Villisca. The man from the train, Rachel McCarthy, and her father, Bill James, believe they found the murderer. And the man from the train is a book. And they believe that Paul Mueller is the one that killed them and that he was a serial killer that was overlooked. Did I read the book? No. Will I? Most likely. We'll do a part 2 on that. That was my husband, by the way. But yeah, that is all of the information on the axe murder. And I'm feeling better now. And I'm going to go inside. And we're going to do more. Please look out for my TikTok. Probably going to post on my YouTube. And as usual, there will be content on my Patreon. I'm hoping to have extra content for the Patreon. But we'll just see how the night goes. So, all right, guys. If you go ghost hunting, don't forget the salt. Unfortunately, I can't use salt because this is in my house. So we just gonna cleanse afterwards. Maybe say some prayers. There are a bunch of coins and dolls in there. And the coins, well, there's notes with the coins. And they're like, I'm sorry for taking a picture, for videoing. I didn't want to take part of your soul. I'm so sorry. Take this as an offering and apology. I didn't know that was a thing there. And a lot of people have ghost hunted here, so I don't know. I don't know. But when I start, I will walk in and just be like, I'm just here, just looking around, saying hi. I don't want to bother you. I just want to capture some history, and we're going to chill. I listened to a podcast, and the ghost hunter from Ohio, by the way, said to not use any tools and to just go in and chill out and see what happens. So I think that's what we're going to do for the most part. So I'm going to sign off again. If you go ghost hunting, don't forget the salt. And as always, stay spooky, peeps.
So, the hauntings. The ghosts that are known to be in the Villisca Axe Murder House are not only the victims, but also the axe murderer and or possibly a malevolent spirit, which could either be the axe murderer or something else entirely. We're not quite sure, and I couldn't get a definitive answer to that, but there's definitely something still evil in there. So, obviously, the Stillinger girls usually haunt downstairs because they were in bed in the parlor bedroom where Catherine's bed is, and Catherine was upstairs with her brothers, and then everyone upstairs, as well as the axe murderer. It is more so, I feel like, the children than the parents that are haunting as victims. But I couldn't really get a definitive answer on that either. But it does seem that the children are more active than the adults, as well as the axe murderer. Again, we don't know who the murderer is, but there is a lot of energy and influence within the house. In 2014, people stayed in the house overnight. The caretaker met them at the house, and one of the gentlemen was in the house by himself at the time that this happened. And I want to say maybe like 45 minutes to an hour later, they came in, or I've even heard like the next day when the caretaker came and met them at the house, he came in. So I'm quite unsure how this person was in there by themselves and not noticed, because I'm pretty sure he was with at least one other person. But they found him in the Stillinger girl room, and he had stabbed himself. He did live, but the claim was that something came over him and forced him to stab himself in the chest with his hunter's knife that he had on them. And ever since, you are not allowed to have any sort of weapon at all whatsoever on you while inside the house, due to this malevolent presence that might be making people want to hurt themselves. The other thing that people have had more of, specifically with like spirit boxes and talking to the children, is I've seen a lot of quote unquote evidence that says the children saying that the preacher did it. I find this evidence a little iffy, just for the pure fact that I fully believe the murderer was in the house already, hidden in the attic, while the Moores were at the church. And the preacher that was accused was the one preaching that night. They left around 9:30. They got back to the house around 10. And the murderer was already there, waiting for them to go to sleep. There was no time for the preacher to preach and then beat them to the house and get in somehow. Some people believe that the murderer somehow got in through a window by removing the screen and the glass, but that just doesn't seem likely. I find it more likely that the how the murders happened and the fact that he went back upstairs and axed them all again. This was personal. This person knew them. Just from the psychology and everything, and not even understanding what the motive could have been from anyone who was accused in the town, this person knew them. I 100% wholeheartedly believe that. Now, to the experiences of the night, we got there, and whether it was the pizza or not, we both felt disgusting. At the beginning of the night, it was most likely the pizza. If you do stay again, drive the 14 miles to the next town to eat, or bring your own food, because gas station pizza is not your friend, I promise you, unless you grew up on it. I'm assuming, because lots of people were getting pizza from the gas station, because that is the only place to eat within 14 mile. Otherwise, you have to drive 14 miles. You know, it is what it is. But for people who did not grow up on gas station food, it was gross and our stomachs hurt. Really, really bad. I thought I was going to throw up at one point and went outside, and that's when I recorded the episode today, because I needed fresh air. So after I recorded, we went back inside. We started to feel a little better. The energy in the house is extremely heavy. I had anxiety the entire time, which I couldn't tell if that was just me or the house. It could have been either. I was fine when I was outside. Downstairs specifically, I had this crushing fear. I was terrified of the house when I was downstairs. Once I was able to get myself to go upstairs, I felt a little better upstairs. The attic itself terrifies me. I think I'm just terrified of the axe murder in general. That energy is not okay. For one, it's dark, it's scary, and frankly, I didn't want to end up waking up with him over me with an axe. That was all I could think about, and that was terrifying me as well. There were some sounds. I heard almost like the attic door unlatching, but the attic door never moved. But I heard this like latching noise. I heard it twice. My husband heard it the first time, but he didn't hear it the second time. There was some footstep noises. My husband heard something upstairs in the children's closet, almost like a shuffling or I mean, honestly, I can't even describe it to you because I did not hear it, but he said it sounded kind of like a shuffle from the closet, and he jumped, and he is trying to explain that away, but I don't think he can. He is a skeptic. Huge skeptic. I mean, I go with things, I'm not going to lie, I go with things scientifically. I really do. I try to find reasonable explanations before I jump straight to ghost. I do believe in spirits. I do believe in the energies and the vibrations and everything, but I do go at it scientifically, if that makes sense. So really there was just some noises. We did end up leaving around 2:30, 2:45 in the morning because we felt disgusting. We did not prepare for sleeping, and all we had was a blanket and the hardwood floor, and there was no way I was going to be sleeping on that. So we just left and we came home. Nothing was happening anyway, and we kind of just got bored and gave up. But we do have plans on finding other places to go and ghost hunting there, possibly dragging our friends along, because I don't know, I feel like that would just be really entertaining. Anyway, that is it for the short explanation on what went on in the house. I will have a video up. I did record the entire time we were there, so I will have hopefully a video edited and up by Friday with evidence, and then of course there will be longer versions out on the Patreon as well for subscribers, and you can just see us debate, bicker back and forth, and me not knowing what to do with myself when I hear things. I was more focused on listening, so I don't really know what I captured, but there was a person on my TikTok live that claimed to see things. So over the next couple of days, I am going to be going through all of that footage and putting it all together, and it'll all be done hopefully by Friday at the latest. So I am officially signing off once again. If you go ghost hunting, don't forget the salt, and as always, stay spooky and look out for the evidence. Chasing Legends.